Andrew, Bob, thank you so much for taking some time today to have this discussion with us. So we're going to get started. Again, Linda Yu and Steve Horath. I just want to go through everyone who's out there to thank them for attending. This will really be fast-paced debate, tackling over a dozen questions in 60 minutes. The candidates, please observe the on-screen timer. There will be a timer, you'll see, and stay within allotted response times. It's really a ding or a buzzer or whatever. First Steve had a buzzer. I said, well, it's my bicycle bell. Okay, so if you hear that, that means time's up and we have to move on. So again, all right. And the debate observers, please use the Q&A to post questions, and we'll select one or two at the end if we have time when we wrap up. And if you want to address any questions particular to Andrew Lewis or Bob Kettle, please put that in the Q&A as well. Okay, Bob or Andrew, any other questions before we get started? Okay, so
no questions.
Okay, so this is going to be a really kind of introduction, really fast, 10 seconds response. Okay, you ready? All right. A, favorite tree species. Bob?
Evergreen, cedars and firs.
Andrew?
The Western red cedar, given its history and importance to the first people of this region.
Okay. Favorite season.
Fall.
Andrew?
Oh, fall, actually. Yeah.
Favorite drink. Andrew?
A Indian Pale Ale from a District 7 brewery, like let's say Holy Mountain.
Okay. Bob?
I have to go since my parents are from England, and every time I go home visit my mom, my tea consumption goes to the roof, and so I like having tea with my mom.
Thanks. Okay. D, coffee, black or with cream. Bob?
With cream, one cream only.
Andrew?
I like whole milk with my coffee, which is, I guess a type of cream. So I guess cream.
Okay. Which Seattle neighborhood do you call home? Andrew?
Queen Anne.
Bob?
And also Queen Anne. Yeah, we're nearly neighbors.
Okay. F, what type of housing is your primary residence? Multifamily or single family? Bob?
Single family.
Andrew?
A townhome duplex with a shared wall with one neighbor. So I guess multifamily, sort of. It's sort of in the middle.
Okay, last question. What percentage of District 7 housing consists of 3 or more multifamily housing units? Bob?
I would go, I don't know the exact number. I would say it's more than people expect based on these stereotypes. So I would go a third.
The percentage number?
33.
Okay. Andrew?
I'll guess a little bit higher. I'll guess 45%.
Okay, thank you. Well, Steve, should we give them the answer to that? Right.
84% of our district is multifamily housing. Single family makes up only 16%. Okay,
so I'm going to turn over to Steve to kind of go through these questions, and I'll be the timekeeper with the bell. So are you guys ready? Okay, Steve, I'll let you go.
Okay, all right. Well, many of us, Linda and I included, are actually multifamily dwellers. And we're observing the call today. In fact, that's mostly who this went out to. So we'll start with Andrew, and then we'll alternate between questions. But Andrew, let's go first with you, Councilmember Lewis. Please describe what you believe to be the primary similarities and differences between the 84% and 16% that are multifamily versus single family in District 7.
Well, I would say the primary similarity is regardless of where we live, there are so many resources we hold in common that are critical to our quality of life. Obviously, public safety, regardless of where we live, we need to have a safe, thriving community that doesn't change if you're in multifamily housing or single family housing. All of us take advantage of our parks, our open spaces, and our Seattle Public Library, for example, that dramatically enhance our quality of life. I think that when it comes to particular density of housing, you do start to get some differences in how we plan to accommodate those amenities. The Belltown community, for example, is not very well served by parks and open space relative to Queen Anne and Magnolia. And that is partly reflective of how the city has planned and developed growth in those different areas. But by the same token, our denser neighborhoods have a rich concentration of cultural assets, because that's where we plan centrally those kinds of things, like the symphony, like theaters, like the Fifth Avenue, our big Grand Central Library in the middle of downtown, really unique activations like our Pike Place Market. So I think depending on the area, it's reflective of different planning practices. But it's an interesting question.
That's the bell. All right, Candidate Kettle. Primary similarities and differences between the needs of multifamily and single-family residents in D7. Here you go.
One thing going back to the previous question, I just wanted to note too, is that, a lot of times when you see the single family homes, we've been having a lot more of the add-dos and dad-dos. And so we do kind of have a, multifamily, not quite the same as that question was listed, but we do have that mix, like, for example, in Queen Anne. Now, to the question, everything starts from a safe base. That is whether you're in a single family residence and or you're on the slope in a, multifamily area, or, as we move down through the district, downtown Belltown. That is the key thing. We have to have a safe base in terms of our public transport systems, our bus systems, the ability to go to the small businesses, the coffee shops, to the retail, whatever it may be. These are the similar things that we have, but we also have to be safe with our schools. As we've seen recently in the press reporting, that's a big issue in Ballard High right now. And this is something that came to my attention today when the father reached out to me saying that his son would have been with those kids, but was not because of, just happenstance. So, these are the similarities, the challenges that we have, and we need to work through those. And then it's really about, also building those pieces, like for community, those amenities that we have. Do we have the, equal access to the libraries? Do we have equal access to the different pieces of local government and local options that we have that for us all? And I'm going to definitely stop before I hit number one there, so I don't get the buzzer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much. We did ask the candidates to complete some questions before the session today, and their answers have been placed on the screen here so that everybody can see what those are side by side. So we'll start with Candidate Kettle for this question. And these are your answers below. What do you believe is the best way to improve communication between the city of Seattle and the residents of D7? And you have a minute and a half.
Okay, great. The bottom line is we definitely need to have a all the above option. One of the things that we've been working through here in Queen Anne and Magnolia from my time on the Queen Anne Community Council is working with the district representative and getting that response back. Sometimes email doesn't work, and the like, and so we have to have these multi options. And one of the things based on that experience that I've had coming out of the neighborhood here in Queen Anne is the fact that we really should have the creation of a District 7 neighborhood council. That's what I'm going to do when I take office, to offset the loss of the district council, which was a big mistake by Mayor Ed Murray. And what I want to bring is the neighborhood community councils, to include like Uptown Alliance and other organizations, to bring that kind of hear what's coming from the community, but also, hey, in reverse, what's happening in City Hall. But importantly, give the chance that the Magnolia Community Council can learn from Belltown. We need a downtown community council, and that could learn from Queen Anne. And the reason why we need this is that we really need to, as it says there on the screen, keep City Hall feet to the fire. So these are the things that I want to add to all the basic things in terms of the the meetings in person and the like, because we need to have that ability to have that extra communication from the neighborhoods to City Hall. So that's why I started with number one, but obviously number 2 and 3, the meetings are so important, and we really need to build on this communication between the district representative and the community, because it hasn't been there so far.
All right, thank you.
I was on at 0.
Thank you, Bob. All right, and I do want to clarify, we asked the candidates to rank order these. So these are their preferences in rank order, starting from 1 and in this case, down to 6. Councilmember Lewis, what do you believe is the best way to improve communication between the city and the residents of D7?
So, one thing that I'll add to the options that you provided is, we need to be bringing City Hall back into the neighborhoods again in a much bigger way, like we used to do pre-COVID, at least so I've been told. When I presided over the renewal of the Metropolitan Park District last year, one of my big priorities, since I was holding the gavel for that process, so to speak, was we should hold our first offsite meeting, official meeting, since pre-COVID, something we used to do all the time, something we hadn't done since pre-COVID. We had a meeting at the Northgate Community Center of the entire Park District Board that was offsite, and so it allowed people who couldn't, under normal circumstances, get all the way downtown. They were able to come and participate in that official open meeting. My colleagues came, not all of whom had been on a regular basis to North Seattle to hear some of the specific concerns that, in that case, District 5 had around parks and open space. We repeated that and did the same thing. We did one at Rainier Beach Community Center as well. And then, of course, we had a public hearing in City Hall for the center of the city. But getting out in the community and letting people go to an official council meeting, with clerks, with a quorum to make decisions, but doing it right there in your community so you don't have to go all the way down.
All right, thank you. And this will be our third question. Councilmember Lewis will start this one. This is about the climate. There's been a lot of studies, including from Seattle departments, that say downtown is over 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding region because there's less tree canopy and green space. And this is a quote: tree canopy cover is critical for lowering temperatures and reducing heat island effects in our warming climate. That came from a city department in the 2021 canopy cover study. Councilmember Lewis, do you support more tree canopy and green space in downtown?
Yes, I absolutely do. When we look at downtown, we're going to have to accommodate a lot of that canopy space due to the unique density of downtown in our parks and open spaces and on our right-of-way. Right-of-way in particular is a really promising area to increase tree canopy. It represents 27% of the entire landmass of the city of Seattle. We can be doing a lot more in our right-of-way to plant trees and to have park boulevards that lattice work the downtown and increase our canopy. We also need to lean into opportunities that sites like the Battery Portal site provide to expand park amenities in our city center. We don't have a lot of open space, as I alluded to in an earlier response, in our center city. That reflects in our overall tree canopy. And we need to take advantage of those opportunities when unique and coveted open spaces do present themselves.
Excellent. All right, candidate Kettle, do you support more tree canopy and public green space in downtown?
I absolutely do, and I'm pretty sure that of the 14 candidates for the district races, I'm the only one who's spoken before the Seattle Urban Forestry Commission, and I did that on a project here in Queen Anne. And it's important to do that because we were able to save the big elms on 9th Avenue, some firs off of McGraw, and a big cedar on 10th, and we also were able to do densification there. And these are the kinds of things that we need to build on. We need to protect these tree canopies because they do provide that shade. They do allow for, to keep things cooler. And it shouldn't just be in Queen Anne that we can succeed in this area. We have to have it in other areas. And this goes to like an equity piece. And we need to, look for other areas. I mentioned in downtown, but south of, downtown, we really need to support these other areas of the city so that they too can be having this tree canopy, which is so important for the neighborhoods and for the health, really, of all our citizens.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, we'll start. This was another ranked choice question. Both candidates were presented before tonight's session. We'll start with candidate Kettle. This is, how would you propose developing a plan supporting more tree canopy and public green space in downtown Seattle? And you have 60 seconds.
Basically, what we need to do is basically go through these ranked order things and have a plan that brings them all together. We can't just have one option. We have to bring all of them together. We have unique circumstances in each neighborhood and within each district. And so we have to have kind of an all the above approach and then adapt due to local conditions. And so that is the plan that really, it has to be comprehensive. It has to have all these different pieces in. And, and it has to have the inclusion also from the developer community. So we need to work with them so that we can have good options from the get-go with the planning moving forward. And, as mentioned, obviously the right-of-ways are important. We need to take advantage of every green space. And I will add too that I love the mix of new deciduous trees and the like, but we have to keep that evergreen status for us. And so we really need to ensure that we do keep that those evergreen trees. So then, when we fly into Seattle during the wintertime, we can be, experiencing that green.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Lewis, what are your proposals for developing a plan supporting more tree canopy and public green space in downtown?
I alluded to some of this in my previous answer. It definitely did a shout out to Battery Park. I think that has a lot of potential to be a place where we add a lot more capacity. I really do think that if we were to do, an ordinance that is the concept of which is pitched in the survey that was given, it really is important to sync that up with a strategy around how we plan our right-of-way to assume a larger canopy going forward in our denser, more urban areas like the neighborhoods that make up downtown. And that is what I would continue to have as a priority in making sure we're moving forward on a number of these different things going into the future.
All right, thank you. So Councilmember Lewis, we'll start with you. This is the second portion of this question. What's most important for District 7 in downtown Seattle and why? And the two options for you to reflect on are continued development and climate-friendly initiatives that reduce the effects of global warming. You have 60 seconds.
So to a certain degree, if we're looking as a region at how we are going to combat global climate change, it's sort of both of these things, right? Like continued development in our downtown core is helping our region by preventing sprawl, by preventing global climate change. But continued development needs to be done in a way where there is concurrent planning around amenities, where there are development plans for things like the Third Avenue Vision, which has long been proposed by the Downtown Seattle Association to completely redo the streetscapes on Third Avenue to complement future residential residents. So, climate-friendly initiatives, I mean, it kind of depends on exactly what we're referring to, like presumably the proposed building efficiency standards legislation. That is important, but even having more of our density concentrated downtown help.
All right, thank you. And candidate Kettle, what's most important for D7 in downtown Seattle and why? Continued development and climate-friendly initiatives that reduce the effects of global warming. 60 seconds.
Thank you. Obviously the Growth Management Act has a big play in this, and it's, so now we're going more tactical, more on the ground in terms of the city and specifically District 7, since we do have the downtown core. So that point is germane and important. But looking at downtown and the like, one of the things that I'd like to say is that regarding the development, we need to maintain the design review. I know some are like, hey, we just need to develop and we just get rid of design review. Well, design review was the way that we were able to save those trees on this one project here in Queen Anne. It's the McGraw Square project, formerly Seattle Children's Home. And so we need to keep that. Now, I understand from experience that, when we have an appeal, the community says, oh, that's okay. And then the developers look at it as a lawsuit. So I understand that. So we need to create some guardrails, but we really need to keep that design review piece in place so then we can work together at the get-go. Also, it's not just tree canopy. We should be looking at what is constituting our roads. That is big. We need to move away from blacktop.
All right, that's the bell. Candidate Kettle, we're keeping on our time tonight. Thank you both for helping us do that. Public safety. This is a big topic. Candidate Kettle, this will go first to you. What do you believe are the primary differences between the needs of businesses and the needs of residents when it comes to safety? You have 90 seconds.
To be honest, I don't think there's some primary differences. I talk about this on a regular basis that, because as you know, public safety is the first, along with public health and homelessness for our campaign. But when I go to it, I said it's about having a safe base. And so that safe base is needed for the businesses, big and small. And it also is important for the workers to get to those businesses, so the public transport. But it's not just the workers, it's also, as you know, students use the bus system in order to get to school. And we have to have safe schools, again, like what we've seen in Ballard. And by the way, just a few weeks ago, we had a killing on a bus. So these are, for businesses and residents. And of course, we need our homes. Oftentimes we talk about violent crime and property crime, and people discount the impact of property crime because it's not just the loss of property. It has impacts on us. It impacts our mental health, the anxiety that comes from it, which is then just triggered down the line when there's a car problem and the like. So we have to have this kind of all hands on deck approach. We have to have this idea that we need a safe base across all areas. And in that way, we can really really attack this issue of the permissive environment. Unfortunately, the defund pledge by our incumbent, along with the different pieces along the line, has created this permissive environment, which is creating this public safety challenge. And again, we have to have a safe base, and that's across all sectors. Thank you.
All right, thank you. To Councilmember Lewis, public safety, you'll have 90 seconds to answer. What do you believe are the primary differences between the needs of businesses and the needs of residents when it comes to safety? Here you go.
So, I actually don't think that there's a significant difference. I think that there's actually a big interplay. For example, for quite some time, organized retail crime or shoplifting that may not on the surface have appeared to be organized retail crime, but in reality was part of organized retail crime, is an upstream impact that might not immediately seem like it's producing a less safe environment, like a less safe violent crime environment. But to enforce the black market of these organized retail crime syndicates, gangs use violence. You can't take somebody to court to argue over, who possesses stolen merchandise. You use violence to enforce those rules. So when there is a deprioritization of, for example, cracking down on large volumes of organized retail crime, which is not the case anymore in the city of Seattle. That is something that is a big priority for Mayor Harrell and for the city council. It ultimately reflects in violence and disorder that impacts all of us as residents in the city. So I don't actually think that in reality there's that big of a contrast, but in the past it has been seen that more work to help small businesses with organized retail crime takes from violent crime, and that's just not true.
Well, that was fast. Right before the bell, Andrew. Great, good.
Yeah, you beat the buzzer. All right, this will go back to you, Councilmember Lewis. Public safety, number 2. Please rank the following highly prolific public safety concerns and criminal activity in order of priority and why. And both candidates, again, rank these beforehand. But Councilmember Lewis, you'll get to speak to these for 90 seconds. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's always really challenging to triage, these very, very serious things that are happening to people in our community. But you always have to start at the top with the things that are the most invasive. Being assaulted, obviously burglary, breaking and entering, robbery, which means that a weapon is typically involved or forced to take stolen property. I mean, these are the things that have to be focused on. If these are not the highest priority, then nothing is being singled out as a priority. When you start getting down the track, I mean, obviously drug dealing is at the core of fueling a lot of the underlying activity, as I alluded to in my earlier answer. If you're looking at long-term focus to disrupt and undercut a lot of these markets, you need to make sure that you're focusing on some of those long-term things. I consider organized retail crime to in essence be included with robbery. So shoplifting, which I consider maybe more necessity crime, like there's ways that we can deal with that with like diversions or some other thing to focus on it if it is just purely necessity-based shoplifting. And then obviously, like I think drug use generally is a public health crisis. I think trafficking should be a high priority, but I think the use itself, we should try to get people help, try to get them into treatment rather than use criminal sanction.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Candidate Kettle, this is going to you. You answered this question beforehand. Please rank the following highly prolific public safety concerns and criminal activity in order of priority and why. 90 seconds.
Well, as you know, Steve, I responded twice because in reality, my first response was the equally, aside from the assault, because first is violent crime, and then after that is the property crime, and you really can't get into, distinguish between the two. Now, what I've done here is started with the drug dealing. As mentioned back in March, my opponent was saying that he was shocked that drug dealers can operate with impunity on 3rd Avenue. And as I've said in other locations, I'm shocked that he was shocked because it is due to the defund pledge that we had from the city council to include that from the incumbent that has led to this permissive environment. And so and then what comes out of this is, the drug dealing piece, I ranked it higher because yes, we need to lead with compassion and then also wisdom, lead with, like we do with the LEAD program. But anytime that we have a drug problem, then we market, and then we have a stolen goods market. So these things are interrelated. So we really need to attack the primary cause a lot of times. And this is what I've seen from my work when I stood up and chaired the Public Safety Committee on the Queen Anne Community Council for the better part of 8 years, and from my lessons learned from that process as part of the West Precinct Advisory Council. And so we have to have this approach where we bring back our police officers, but we have to deal with the things that are then creating bigger problems. And that's why the ranking is as it is.
All right, thank you very much. We're on to question number 6. This will first go to you, Candidate Kettle. Another public safety question. Please rank the following options to address your priorities to help ensure the residents of District 7 are safe walking around the streets of Seattle. You have 90 seconds.
Well, if we want to have a safe, walking around, this is a problem that I hear again and again. People in downtown and Belltown can't walk safe at night. They can't walk to the waterfront. They can't walk here. Or there's not, never mind walking, but taking the bus is often a problem. And again, this comes from the permissive environment that's being created by the loss of so many officers. So obviously, rank number 1 is we have to get the staffing up for the Seattle Police Department. And as I've said many times, and this is important to say, is that to succeed in public safety, we also have to succeed in public health. And obviously in public health, the biggest challenges are with behavioral health and addiction. So we need to build up that capacity, leveraging state and county, but we also have our own. So I was just at the launch of the care department yesterday. That is an important step forward with Chief Smith. And so by finding that balance, by working the public health pieces, but then also the public safety pieces, we can really make it more safe for walking around. But until we do so, until we address this permissive environment that came from such a massive loss of officers, is we're going to be basically running to stand still. So we have to have an all hands on deck effort. We need to be working these issues from both angles, and I think that we can do that. And by the way, it also means community policing teams, bringing in the neighborhoods as part of this discussion. And unfortunately, we lost those community policing teams because we lost so many officers in SPD.
All right, thank you, Candidate Kettle. To you, Councilmember Lewis, please rank the following options to address your priorities to help ensure the residents of D7 are safe walking around the streets of Seattle. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know that my opponent tends to start the clock on the public safety challenges that we're experiencing, from, what happened in 2020 and the events around defund and COVID-19. I mean, the reality from anyone who's living downtown knows is that these problems have been endemic for a long time. They were endemic when we had over 1,300 officers. One of the first things that happened before COVID, before defund, when I took office in January of 2020, was a mass shooting on 3rd Avenue. That mass shooting wasn't prevented by having over 1,300 officers in the city of Seattle. There's more that we need to do. The analysis that we've been doing recently as a city is really looking at what should the role of officers be, and how do we build back a police force that is equipped, that is supported, that is prepared for the things that only police officers can do and the things that should be their highest priority. After that, what kind of civilian officials and civilian responders can we hire to put in place to do things we've traditionally had officers do, but that they really don't need to do? And to get to some of the root causes that undergird a lot of our public safety challenges. That is why the care department, which I joined Mayor Harrell to launch earlier this week, is such an important development. We need to make sure that there is a professional that can respond to any and every 911 call quickly and efficiently, resolve the situation, and keep our community healthy and safe. And that is what I'm committed to.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. All right, we're moving on to citywide. We're about halfway done. I'm having a lot of fun, by the way. I hope you're both having fun. This is police accountability. This will go to you first, Councilmember Lewis. What, if any, proposals would you make to increase police accountability and the Office of Police Accountability to make changes there? 90 seconds.
So I have to be careful because I do serve on the Labor Relations Policy Committee. So I just want to make it really clear at the front that I'm speaking purely as an individual, not as a member of that body, and speaking in general terms. The 2017 Accountability Ordinance offers good guidance for the kinds of things that we should have in place to make sure that we have a police force that we can rest assured will be held accountable when there are transgressions. There are things in that ordinance that are not currently in contract and thereby not enforceable. We need to be able to negotiate in Washington state under state labor law accountability measures. We can't impose them absent collective bargaining. They have to be bargained. Some of those things that are in the ordinance but not in the contract that could be beneficial. Broader subpoena power so that the Office of Police Accountability can go after more records to have full and comprehensive investigations. Independent arbitration, making sure that the union in essence cannot pick an arbitrator, that an arbitrator is going to be independent and fair and not overturn discipline in a capricious manner. And making sure that we have more civilian investigation. A lot of the officials that investigate officer misconduct right now are sworn officers. And I actually think all of the investigations should be done by civilian investigators rather than sworn personnel.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Lewis. To you, candidate Kettle, police accountability. What, if any, proposals would you make to increase police accountability and or make changes to the Office of Police Accountability? You have 90 seconds.
I think it's important to recognize the improvement that we have had with the consent decree, and I fully support the consent decree reforms, and I do believe that we need to build on those moving forward in a constructive manner with both SPD and the Guild, the police union. One of those things that we really should be promoting too is Before the Badge. If everybody on this call could watch and participate in Before the Badge program, you would see that the new recruits coming in have that public service. They understand, they're learning about the communities and going to be better officers. To the accountability pieces, the Community Police Commission, we need to support that. We need to get, community members that are working hard for that commission. We need to support the Office of the Inspector General and also the Office of Police Accountability. I support that. I support the accountability of the officers, to include Officer Adder and the incident we had recently following the death of the young lady from India earlier this year. But what's really needed? We need a reset of the City Council, because until we get that, we're not going to have a reset of the relationship between the City Council and the police department. We're not going to have a reset of the relationship between the City Council and the Guild. And unfortunately, it's toxic at the moment. And so therefore, if we really want to move forward on accountability and get these measures in place, we're going to have a reset of the City Council.
All right, thank you, candidate Kettle. And the next question will begin with you. In the general category, what are the top 3 priorities for the things you would propose to change about the way our city operates, and why? You'll have 90 seconds.
We have these discussions a lot. Oftentimes it comes up with the revenue versus budget problem. I talk about the budget with its silos. Well, we also have these issues with our departments. I had a discussion regarding affordable housing with a developer, a nonprofit developer, and she was talking about the challenges between SDCI, City Light, and SDOT and the like. And they were supposed to go full power on this 200 plus unit affordable housing, and that was in June. And I was talking to her at the end of August as part of a door billing, as I was at her door, and she was frustrated because that affordable housing was becoming unaffordable. Why? Because of the poor lack of the coordination. These silos that exist in our government are hurting. the lack of response is really something that I've been hearing again and again. And I've experienced myself as a neighborhood person working these issues in terms of getting response out of, the city council, but also the departments. And so we need to have that. And, part of that goes to, the big question is, should we have the city government in person or remote or some type of hybrid? At a minimum, we need a hybrid, and that would really change how the city operates. And when you combine that with, we basically need a tiger team effort on that development piece I was talking about. We need to break down the silos between the departments. Maybe we should combine some of these departments to gain those efficiencies, by the way, which would go back to helping the budget problem.
All right, Councilmember Lewis, to you, what are the top 3 priorities for the things you would propose to change about the way our city operates, and why? 90 seconds.
The first thing that, that sounds really boring and bureaucratic, but I think it's very important, is I think that we really, really need to have a base budgeting exercise as part of our budgeting process. One of the problems with our budget process is not, that the city council has too much power. I think it might arguably be that it has too little. Over the previous decades, the mayor has usurped a significant amount of the power in the budget process, and the council, in essence, is dealt some cards and has to pick between a couple of them. What I think that would be helpful is like a year-long collaborative effort that really focuses on the base core services of the city budget, and looks at ways every biennium to true it up, to find efficiencies, and to close gaps. That's not something we do. We never challenge our base assumptions, and I think that it's something that can only happen through a base budgeting exercise. In terms of some other big reforms, I really do think having it be a general expectation that on a basis of every couple of years, every department expect to have a full and complete audit. This is something that would be expensive to resource. Other cities do it, and they make that allocation. But we have not as a city. So figuring out ways to continue to bolster the auditor's office, other big priority.
All right, thank you. Moving on to spending and taxation. This goes hand in hand with some of the responses to the prior question. The city has a finite amount of fiscal resources. And this is to you, Councilmember Lewis, first. Do you believe that the city uses its fiscal resources efficiently? What are the top 3 ways, if any, that you would change how the city manages finances? And this is just 60 seconds, and then there'll be a second question after candidate Kettle answers. To you, Councilmember Lewis, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I sort of answered a little bit of this. I do think that one of the challenges has been, it's sort of being a victim of our own success. We've gone through a decade of massive growth in our budget, massive building boom. There's a lot of people on this call today who probably live in buildings that, that we built in this recent decade. And the result of that is our budget ballooned. We have not commensurately looked at the sustainability of the services that we have gotten accustomed to based on that increase in our budget. The growth is not keeping pace with our new ambitions in this area. So we need to take a really hard look at what our expectation is going to be going forward. First and foremost, we have to make sure that the core charter services of the city are taken care of. And then we have to have a hard conversation as a city with all of these extra things that we've piled on. What do we want to keep? What do we want to maybe get rid of?
All right, thank you. Candidate Kettle, do you believe the city uses its fiscal resources efficiently? What are the top 3 ways, if any, you would change how the city manages its finances? 60 seconds.
In short answer, no. And the previous answer by the incumbent also highlights another reason why we have to have a reset of the city council. First is we need that proper leadership with good governance and accountability and transparency. We need to be looking at all programs, seeing if they accomplish their goals. And because I believe there's a lot of budget inertia, things are just moving along because they did last year. And I also mentioned earlier about the budget silos. We're talking about deficit. We have a budget problem. We have these walls between different pots of money. Sometimes it may make sense, but sometimes it doesn't. The other thing too on this front is taxes. It seems like we add these taxes on top of each other. Everybody has an idea, and what ends up happening is It's almost like the old days when we had MS-DOS and Microsoft started putting stuff on it and it became too much for the MS-DOS baseline. It's the same thing here. We need to have a comprehensive look at how we do our taxes, because everything, it's probably working cross purposes because it's so like a Band-Aid approach that we employ.
All right, thank you. Oh, what just happened there? All right, Candidate Kettle, this one's back to you. What would you propose and support to eliminate the deficit in the proposed 2024 budget? 60 seconds.
Well, first, I kind of reject the premise that there is a deficit in the proposed budget. Again, it goes back to the previous point, and this came up. I've been endorsed by Councilmember Alex Peterson, and we've had exchanges, and he ran through this for me. He highlighted that we don't really have a deficit. It's where the money is, where it's held, and the rules regarding moving the money. So really, again, I kind of reject the premise. Now, if we want to, and if we go ahead and say, hey, yes, we really want to have this walled off, then we should do that consciously and not throw around terms like deficit, because overall we don't have a deficit. We may have a deficit in one area, but not in the other. So as the budget, we're essentially equal. I don't want to say exactly, but these are the things that we need to work through. And I'm very thankful for the insight from Councilmember Alex Peterson on that, and that's one reason why he endorsed me: fiscal responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Candidate Kettle. To you, Councilmember Lewis, what would you propose to eliminate the deficit in the proposed 2024 budget? 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think that the mayor and the council need to do three things as we look at the next biennial budget. The first thing that we need to do is really have a year-long base budgeting process, like I alluded to earlier in my remarks, that really takes a hard look at what we want the city to be in the business of doing and what we don't want the city anymore to be in the business of doing. Look for efficiencies, look for consolidations, look for ways that we can save money and reduce what that overall number is. Put it in perspective, the city council and the mayor actually saved $60 million in the previous year without really challenging any basic assumptions. So I think that there is a lot of growth there. The second thing that we need to do is look at some of these other taxes that have ordinance protected spend plans and see if we need to loosen those things. We need to also finally, after all of that is done, take a hard look at leveraging federal resources.
Ooh, the bell. The bell is brutal. Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. This first question will go to you, but this is the question with the most background. Affordable housing is a big deal. It's a big deal in Seattle, King County, across the nation. Recently, the city council voted to upzone 11 blocks. The staff estimate from city staff was that up to 1,200 units could be developed for residential living, and 10 to 20 of those, which would be a 1.7% ratio on the high end, or $8 million in funding for affordable housing could be the result in the next 10 to 20 years. The Metropolitan King County Council found Seattle needs 112,000 new units of housing by 2044. 39% of that, and there's a graph below, nearly 44,000 units, needs to be affordable to people making only $28,800 a year. And another 17%, that's 19,000 units, needs to be available to people earning up to 50% of the AMI, which isn't that much more. Florida State passed SB 102 earlier this year that allows developers to build larger projects that include at least 40% affordable units. That would be a lot more than 10 to 20 that we saw above there, which was a city staff estimate. So, Councilmember Lewis, you've been a vocal advocate for affordable housing, but you've also supported the upzoning that's only going to give us 1.7% affordable housing. Why do you believe that 1.7% affordable housing is reasonable for the new development? 60 seconds.
Right. Well, this is specifically an upzone of the downtown neighborhood. This is the most expensive real estate in the entire state of Washington. Getting more affordability into the downtown neighborhood is a priority. It's not only going to come from this upzone as a policy. We're going to have other tools like the housing levy that are going to have to come to the fore to make this a reality. But I'm also just going to say that, there's examples of lots of policies around the country of inclusionary zoning policies that have really significant mandates, like the Florida one that you just cited. The effectiveness of those policies, you're going to have to see whether people actually take advantage of it and actually build the 40% incentive. San Francisco, New York City have had inclusionary zoning policies with very, very high percentages, typically what happens is people just don't build. So it has to be a balance. And, I think that this downtown upzone is a good policy, but it's not necessarily an affordable housing policy.
All right, we got the bell. We're moving on. Candidate Kettle, what's holding back the city of Seattle from more affordable housing? 60 seconds.
I think it's again, going to good governance. So we have to employ all different options, and we need to be looking at why isn't the programs that we have really accomplishing their goals. We can look at the MHA, the Mandatory Housing Affordability Program, and the MFTE, the Multifamily Tax Exempt Program, and say, okay, are they accomplishing our goals? I never hear about this, and I have not seen any major change in these programs over the years, even if they're not really accomplishing the goals that we have. And so we really have to do this due diligence, look at it. Yes, they may be partially successful because they're raising money, but then the affordable housing is built in other parts of the city. It's not built in District 7. It's not built where we live in Queen Anne. And so we really need to hard look at these programs to see where they are being done, make sure there's equity piece to that. And again, it goes to good government. So we need to ask the hard questions of these programs and why or why not they're accomplishing our goals in terms of affordable housing.
All right, thank you, Candidate Kettle. And we have another question on this topic. This will start with you. What are your top 3 proposals to meaningfully change Seattle's affordable housing equation in the next 5 years? Candidate Kettle, 60 seconds.
Well, we've been kind of talking about this. One of the things is, the good governance piece. And I do believe that MHA and MFTE have been accomplishing, but we need to be looking at these and seeing how we can adjust. Maybe we can get more funds out of MHA, for example. And then we also should be looking for infill, not having the export of affordable housing going to other districts and other neighborhoods in the city. So that is one of the big things that we need to do. We need to build on these different options. Option number 5 for the comprehensive plan coming up. We need to build up and out our urban villages. We need to make these neighborhood nodes like mini urban villages, and then also look to build along our arterials, like particularly with public transportation. So we need to really push the comprehensive plan piece. And then finally look at what other options, like we talk about this downtown upzone, that within like the urban cores, how can we do better in terms of creating housing, like taking commercial buildings and going to residential.
All right, there's the bell. Councilmember Lewis, what are your top 3 proposals to meaningfully change Seattle's affordable housing equation in the next 5 years? 60 seconds.
Right. Well, we do live in a capitalist economy, for better or not. And so you really do need to look at market-based solutions. The options of the government on affordable housing are limited. It's why the United States has a uniquely challenging affordable housing problem, regardless of where you live. We have very strong constitutional protections around how the government can regulate property. So we need to really take a look first at options that make it more flexible, easier to build, and have those savings be passed on to the people. So that means having a comprehensive plan that allows us to build more housing. We need to look at the mandatory housing affordability program, which is coming up on its on a review, to see how we can adjust the levers on that in terms of on-site performance and in lieu fee to produce and maximize more housing and remove potential barriers, particularly along things like townhomes. And we need to make sure that we are leveraging the housing levy resource to the fullest extent to build more subsidized housing.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well, going on to drug use. Councilmember Lewis, drug and alcohol overdose deaths in King County have more than doubled since 2020, and fentanyl accounted for 425% more confirmed overdoses in 2022 than 2020. In 60 seconds, what role does policing play in combating Seattle's drug epidemic? 60 seconds.
Well, first and foremost, it plays a role in the interdiction and holding accountable of traffickers. When it comes to the law enforcement role, that is what has to be the ultimate role. First responders, including police, are on the front lines of making contact with people who are using drugs in public settings. We had a good example last week about how the new drug ordinance is being enforced in an effective way, where people who are using are being sent to the law enforcement assisted diversion program. People who are engaged in other nefarious activity beyond using are being held accountable, arrested for other charges, remanded on warrants. That is a good balance. It is a balance that we built together, working with the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, Chief Diaz and Mayor Harrell, over the last several months. And I think that we are going to increasingly see a reflection in a reduction of public disorder based on this ordinance.
All right, thank you. Candidate Kettle, what role does policing play in combating Seattle's drug epidemic? 60 seconds.
Yes, definitely. We need to have a city that's working well together, so then we can work with county, state, and federal authorities on the law enforcement side, and intelligence and other areas that we can have a, on the interdiction piece. But we also have to have, a public drug use and possession law passed, because it goes to this idea of a permissive environment that got really kicked off with the defund pledge. And that's important because, once we have this, and this goes to the policing point, for example, Deputy Mayor Tim Burgess, some people were arrested for using fentanyl while holding the police warning. And so what we ended up having is, yes, people were going to lead, but then we also taking individuals off the streets that, had arrest warrants. They were for different reasons, and the importance of this, by the way, is, Danny Westney said, why do we squander so much time? The state law had law enforcement assisted diversion in there 27 times, but what we did, we lost 105 days.
Okay. And back to you, Candidate Kettle. What is the #1 change you would propose to change the narrative here? 60 seconds.
It's basically saying the same thing again, in terms of the importance of the permissive environment, which goes again to the defund pledge, which goes to the massive loss of officers. My opponent will talk about getting 28 park rangers, which I really support, but the defund pledge, the loss of all these officers, has created a 20-foot public safety hole for us, and we need a 20-foot ladder to get out of it. It's going to take the entire next term, and this is the legacy that we have with the current city council. And so when we have that, and then it gets reinforced, with the not passing of the public drug use and possession law. And so we shouldn't be surprised, we shouldn't be shocked that drug dealers can operate with impunity on 3rd Avenue. So that is the change that we need. We need to push back on the permissive environment. We need to get the staffing up for the presence, and then we can really look to get those moved over to diversion as required. Because as I said, public safety, public health, two sides of the same coin.
All right, Councilmember Lewis, what's the #1 change you'd propose to change the narrative here? 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think I'll take this opportunity to talk about an editorial that I just saw before going on to the forum here from Dow Constantine in the Seattle Times, talking about sort of this a pivot back, after a decade of really re-examining the role that mass incarceration has played in exacerbating a lot of the traumas, the problems, the challenges that manifest in street disorder. There has sort of been a backslide of people who think that incarceration and jail is a magic solution to a lot of these challenges that we're dealing with that are very multifaceted. I do think that we are going towards a dangerous place where a lot of people are going to regret the ways they assert their leadership in the future if we triple down on a purely punitive approach, and the result is not what we expect.
All right, and we're moving down to our last question here. We are butting up against the end of the hour because we had a bit of a late start, but hopefully we can make it through this. This is about homelessness. King County and the city of Seattle are spending more than ever to address challenges related to homelessness and mental health, yet undulating strategies have been met with mixed success. Please be specific on what your priorities would be and how to address them. And these are the rankings both candidates provided beforehand. This will go to you first, Councilmember Lewis. Please rank the following options and tell us why you rank these this way. You'll have 90 seconds.
I'm really not surprised that both Bob and I put improved planning and due diligence at the top, because if you don't have a plan, right? I mean, then everything else that comes after that is just white noise. There has to be a work plan, a purpose for the King County Regional Homelessness Authority that is broadly agreed upon all the stakeholders, and then they're given charge to implement it. That has to be #1, and I can see that's something Bob and I agree on. Construction of affordable housing. This is really important. Greg Colburn wrote a book recently, Homelessness is a Housing Problem, which makes a very compelling case that affordable housing really is the structural long-term thing that will make a municipality more immune to chronic homelessness as something that's endemic. So that's something that we really need to focus on for the long term. You start pivoting then to things that can stabilize people that are short of permanent housing, like tiny homes and types of sheltering systems. I would note that things like tiny homes and our hotel temporary housing, those things include treatments for mental health, for addiction. So it's not like those are not incorporating that answer, the one solutions related to illegal drugs. But we need to have all of these kinds of things to get people on the street.
All right, thank you. That was the bell. And Candidate Kettle, you'll round us off here. You've ranked the following options. Please tell us why you rank these this way, about the challenges of reducing homelessness and improving mental health, and why. 90 seconds.
At first I want to go back to Dow Constantine, because there's this narrative that's starting to be built up, is kind of like the pendulum swinging back the other way in terms of they're fighting back. But the bottom line is, we had this law go in place, and 7 out of the first 10 were given to lead. They were, transitioned to lead. So it's not a, criminal-led piece. And so when people say that, that's kind of misleading. Regarding the homelessness piece, improved planning and due diligence is, number one. I was on the Queen Anne Community Council in 2015 when Mayor Ed Murray declared the emergency, and his team came and briefed the board. And I was listening to him. I said, this is not going to work. It was terrible. The span of control. It was poor planning across the board. And here we are 8 years later. We had that, false start. Then we have another false start with the KCRA, the King County Regional Homeless Authority organization. Again, false planning, poor planning. And then we had a 2-year false start. All that money and that time lost. For why? I don't understand. Because, they had these ideas. Obviously, their ideas weren't about proper planning. Otherwise, we would be further ahead than we are right now. Fortunately, we have a new interim who I understand is doing better. But again, we lost those 2 years, and they're really so important. And they're really important because, like, I was on 3rd Avenue, and I had a man named Jacob come to me, and he had just gotten out of rehab, but he had nowhere to go. And he was about to go into homelessness again. And he was scared because he almost died before he went into rehab. These are the people that we need to be looking after.
All right, that was our rapid fire. Do we have? We are past our time. I saw there was one question. Candidates, do you have time for the one question?
Sure. I could do one question.
One question. Okay. So the question
I could do 2 if you need.
Okay. The question is, what progress, if any, is being made in reaching a new contract agreement with the Seattle Police Guild?
Well, speaking for myself, I cannot discuss collective bargaining, so I can't answer that question. Sorry.
I work these public safety issues along with the public health and the like, and but from my experience of being a somebody working in the neighborhoods, working these challenges, working with the police department, we need a change. We need a reset of the council, because we absolutely need a reset of the relationship between the city council and the Seattle Police Officer Guild, otherwise known as SPOG, and overall with the police department, because there's no trust. They think that if they give an inch to the council, they'll be taken for a mile. And that's where we are. And so that's why we have to have this reset of our city council, by the way, not just in District 7, but in the other 6 districts as well. And I'm confident that we'll be able to do that. And by the way, I really appreciate the opportunity, Steve, great program, Linda and Tina as well. And for the District 7 viewers, I'd just like to end by humbly asking for your vote.
Thank you. Any other last words from you, Andrew?
No, I will also just express my gratitude. This was a very, very well-run forum. Thank you so much, you guys. And as always, as Brett and sorry, my daughter's talking in the background, as you can hear. But as Steve and Linda know, reach out anytime if I can be of service. Really appreciate your consideration and humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you very much for everyone's time today, and have a good evening. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.